Hello, my friends, and welcome to Italy, a place to love YouTube channel. My name is Antonio, and on this channel, every day I make a video of a property for sale in the Italian market. In each video, I select a property in a different town in one of the 20 regions of Italy. But today, as Sunday, I'm covering different topics about the understanding of the Italian housing market. So, all we have to know if we want to understand better the Italian housing market. Now, this is the third episode. In the first, I've been describing the Italian geography, episode 1. In episode 2, I've been talking about the understanding of the urban areas, which is very important if we are interested to buy a property in Italy or if we are planning to buy. And now in this episode 3, I'm going to talk about the different type of housing solution that we might find in Italy. Very important because we are all different. So we might all be searching for different type of housing solution. Not necessarily there's one type that is good for everyone. But so that's what we are going to talk in this video. Then, if you're interested to watch the previous two, you will find the link below in the description. But so let's start describing the four different type of housing solution, let's say, that I came across since I started making videos on this channel about properties for sale. And now the first one, which is the majority in Italy, maybe not the majority, but is the one that is chosen more than any other one by the Italian people. Okay, so from this point of view, so we have apartments. This is one of the type of housing solution that we might find in Italy. Then we have villas and cottages. Let's say when I talk about villas and cottages, I mainly talk about detached or let's say semi-detached houses. Then the third in my list are the terraced house, which are most of the properties that you might find, a lot of properties that you might find in Italy are terraced houses. But anyway, then I will go deep in each of these type of housing solution. And then the last one are the rural and farmhouse country houses that we might find in Italy. Now, villas obviously are different from the farmhouse, but let's start talking. Let's discuss about all of them and all we have to know about each of these four. So let's start from the apartments. And so let's start understanding generally where we find apartments. Now, in Italy, obviously, let's start from the main cities. So it's also related with the urban areas, the understanding of the urban areas in Italy. Now, we know that in Italy we have many big cities, and let's say 90% of the properties in the cities are apartments. So basically, we find apartments simply everywhere in Italy because during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when the concept of the housing started changing in Italy, even in small towns, while, for example, back in the 60s, in the small towns, we could have found only terraced houses. Since that moment, even, let's say, not only the big cities, which started developing apartments in the early 20s, 30s, and 40s of the last century. So also small towns and rural areas started seeing the building of apartments, even in the small towns. Then, let's say the prices. When we talk about apartments, generally apartments in the cities are expensive, simply because it's the main housing solution And as we know, anyway, people are attracted, Italian people are mainly attracted by the cities. And so this had been pushing the prices of the apartments up. Then we know that in other countries, not so we find different type of solution even in the cities, like in UK, in Ireland, in the United States. People still go for independent houses or semi-detached houses, and in some cases even terraces. But in Italy, the majority of the properties in the cities are apartments, and not only. Then, what can we say about the apartments? Obviously, apartments, we are talking about buildings that go from the 3 up to 10 or 15 story houses, story buildings. And basically, we think that all the apartments have a lift. Now, the lift is very important where we are talking about apartments, because when I'm searching for the properties and I come across apartments, which I never cover that much, to be honest, basically, I always come across that I find inexpensive apartments, but these inexpensive apartments, it's also because they are third, fourth, or fifth floor of buildings without a lift. So these are not a good solution. So basically, these could have been apartments, buildings that had been built maybe in the 50s, in the 60s, or in the 70s. Early 80s, we started having simply lift in all the buildings over 3 story, over 3 stories, uh, over 3 floors. But again, the inexpensive apartments, we find them mainly in buildings without a lift, and also we find apartments also in these small towns where apartments had been built, maybe, for example, um, during the 60s, during the 70s, when we had the boom of the apartments during the 80s. Also, to say that obviously apartments are always including management fees, so we always have extra fees that we have to pay. And also, anyway, they need, time to time, they need maintenance that has to be handled by all the people that have a property in this apartment. Now, if you have a detached house or semi-detached or terraced or a villa, these expenses to fix are all on you. Okay, so we decide if we have an independent house, which in Italy is considered any property. A detached property in Italy is a property, I said this in many videos, is a property that doesn't have management fees. This is the understanding. So we can find a terraced house, 3 floors terraced house, maybe set divided into units. There are no management fees. So this property is already considered a detached house. So basically, this is all we have to know about the apartments. So there are people who prefer apartments, people who prefer houses, different type of housing solution. Um, Apartments are, let's say, the one that are attracting mainly Italians. By what I see, expats or foreigners are not really interested in buying. This is not what expats are searching from Italy. So it goes against the Italian trend. So there is against the Italian trend, but in favor of the expats that might find more type of housing solution which Italian don't prefer, don't like. Okay, now let's talk a bit about the villas, the cottages, detached or semi-detached house that are often with a garden. So that's why now I know most of the people that are searching for properties for sale in Italy are looking for properties that generally have a garden or have a terrace. So the three things that people are looking for are is a terrace, a garden, and 2 bathrooms. Let's say mainly this is the trend of the people that are looking for foreigners that are looking for properties in Italy. Now, villas, cottages, detached and semi-detached houses, um, bungalow, also some type of bungalows, um, are generally more expensive. So we are talking about properties, but at the same time, these properties are not be, we might not find in big urban centers. Now, this is extremely important because obviously, who is looking for a property? A foreigner that is looking for a property at the same time is looking for services. And generally, these houses, which are chosen by the Italian, let's say by the wealthy Italians are living in these type of houses, villas, semi-detached, cottages, and so on. But these are the wealthy. These are the ones that can afford to use a car even to go to buy the milk. So these type of properties always depend on a car. Let's say very hard to get this type of house, a villa. If we might get a villa, for example, a beautiful villa in an area covered with a lot of services, with a lot of main services, that villa will be more expensive. So we might it might not be in the list of people that are searching for properties, inexpensive properties in Italy. So we always have to understand and compromise, that if we get something, we might not get something else. Try to follow. Okay, so this is, and also I noticed that many people during this year and a half that I'm making videos about properties, many people ask me about why these properties have no garden. In Italy, there's no really the concept of having a garden. It's a very small, it's a minority of people. And again, these are the wealthier. Wealthier people are searching for properties that have a garden. Obviously, wealthier people, property is more expensive. Again, it's always related, you know. Then we might find one of these properties, a villa, semi detached, not expensive, maybe with services, with garden. Maybe we can even find something not expensive, but problem is that we might find completely in a raw state. Maybe has to be completely renovated. In many cases, the property should be destroyed and completely rebuilt. So this will bring always when we go for this type of houses, we will always go for an expensive solution. Then it's all about your budget, okay? It depends what budget you have. I see plenty of fairy tale stories, showing millionaires buying villas, buying these, renovating properties that are not worth not even 1 euro, are not worth not even 1 euro, but they go and maybe they spend 500,000 to make a beautiful villa. It's always about money. Okay. Then, and this is for the type of solution. Anyway, villas, cottages, detached, semi-detached house that offer space, offer gardens, not always are offering services. And when they're offering services, these properties are extremely expensive. Now, let's go for the third type of housing solution that I came across during all these years. And we are talking about the terraced houses, which are, let's say, we might not find terraced houses mainly in big cities. Forget about it. We might find a typology that was started being built during the 90s and we call villetta a schiera. So, which it means villetta, small villa. Let's say it's generally a um, two, three rooms, two, three bedrooms. Let's say three, even sometimes four bedrooms on a two or three floors in the big cities. A concept of a housing concept that had been developed only from the early 90s in Italy. We might find this type of villetta schiera. Schiera means terraced, so villetta, a small villa, a small terraced villa. Now, in the concept of a terraced house, which has an adjacent property on one side or another, that's already not a villa. But that's what we call in Italy villetta a schiera. These type of terraced houses, that are the one that we might find in the city, are expensive and are more expensive than the apartments because the wealthy people in the city are going for this type of housing solution, and this type of villetta schiera are the one, this type of terraced houses are the one that have a front and rear garden with garage, so expensive solution again. But the terraced houses, mainly we find, and here we can connect to the typology of the urban areas in the previous video, where I described the towns by the population. So let's say that from 500 inhabitants, just to do a recap, from 500 inhabitants up to 30 30,000 inhabitants, okay, which is the threshold for the 7% taxation in the south of Italy and some region of the center. So these type of towns offer a lot of terraced houses for sale for very good value, simply because are not attractive from the Italian perspective. So simply Italians consider that there's no job, so they prefer to go to the city, and a lot of properties in these towns where we have this type of terraced houses have been inherited by someone in the majority of the cases. So they are selling, they want a quick sale, they want to cash some money, they're not interested to hold more properties not rented out. So, which it's only a loss because they also have to pay taxes on it. So that's where we find the majority of these properties for sale, the terraced houses. So between 500 and 30,000 inhabitants. In this range, in all the towns in Italy that go between this amount, 500 and 30,000, we can find thousands, hundreds of thousands of terraced houses for sale. And the problem, two problems have these type of houses. And okay, the first one is that this type of terraced houses in the towns in Italy, not in the outskirts of the town, but in the town, sometimes even in the historic center, but not only, don't have a garden. So if you're looking for a garden solution, don't have a garden. Then we might find terraced houses, let's say a 20-30% that have two bathrooms, and again a 20-30% of these terraced houses that have a terrace, which is, if I don't have a garden, I'm happy to have a terrace, like in my case. I have a terrace, I have a semi-detached house in a town, is a townhouse, it's semi-detached simply because it's free on three sides, but I don't have a garden, okay, because in the concept, in the understanding of the town, maybe there's only a 10% or even less of the properties here in Montemilone that have a garden. And again, who has a garden is a wealthy. So generally these are properties for wealthy people, so are more expensive. Even in Montemilone it's possible to find some houses very expensive. There are villas on 3 floors, plenty of garden. Prices of the properties goes even in a small town like this from 2, 3, 4, 400,000 euro. So the inexpensive are the terraced one with no garden, generally on 2 floors, always on 2 floors, but inexpensive because in 90% of the cases, the quality, the standards of this terraced house, let's say, is a poor quality. So they are in need of renovation. We might find a 10-20% of this property that are, let's say, ready to live, keys in hands, obviously more expensive than the other. Now, on my channel, I always I'm never pushing to buy properties to renovate, simply because the renovation costs skyrocketed, are very expensive, and we might not get back the money after a full renovation. We might still have realized that the money we have invested between buying and renovating is not matching with the value of the property itself. Actually, if we go for a deep renovation, we might even have an increase of the cadastral value, and these will push for higher taxation. So Italians are avoiding these. Simply, they don't want the property to have a higher cadastral value, simply because then they have to pay more taxes. Also, and this is also related with the energy efficiency rating, which many Italians are doing, but they're not reporting, and they do their own expenses. Who got the bonuses? In Italy, we had a bonus that was called the 110%. In 20 years, the government would have given you back 110% of the money that you spent to renovate. Okay, but that increased the only a few have been able anyway to enter in this opportunity, to get this opportunity. But let's say the cadastral plan had been increased, and the taxation, the early taxation. So partially convenient because every year you get a percentage of the money you spent spread in 20 years. So in the 20 in 20 or 10 or 20 years, you might get the money that you spend 40,000. You will get this money back in 20 years time. But then inflation won't be counted, and then you have the problem with the cadastral plan, which it increased the value, and so then you have to pay more taxes. So compromise this property con adjacent dwellings connected laterally, a compromise between independent houses and properties in a community, which for me are the best solution. And obviously, it's a very narrow market to find inexpensive, in a good condition, in a town, let's say not too small, with services. That's where my goal when I'm searching for properties, my goal always is. Because again, if I want to make properties of that cost 1 million euro, if I want to make videos of properties that cost 1 million euro, or properties very expensive, let's say not 1 million, but even 2, 300,000, or for property that are fully in need of renovation, I can find million of houses for sale. And so then the job would be very easy. But because I'm going deep and always trying to narrow in property that is in a good condition, not expensive, covered by services, my friends, it becomes a big question mark. So that's where all my efforts are. And sometimes, as I said, takes even 3, 4 hours to find a property. It's not a very easy process. Then, okay, let's talk about the fourth type of housing solution that we might find in Italy. I won't spend too much because I already spent a lot of time trying to describe the first three. Here we are talking about rural houses, but mainly farmhouses or countryside houses, which in Italy we call masseria, cascina. So these type of houses that were used by farmers. So are not villa, because even if they're similar to a villa, because a villa is independent, has a garden, also the farmhouses are independent and have garden and land. Generally, farmhouses are coming with big amount of land, with fruit trees, with farming land. But so anyway, these properties are completely isolated, generally in need of massive renovation. So without a car, very hard to, let's say, if you're looking for this typology of property, is because you have your own transport. Once you have your own transport, again, this is one of the episodes will be about just the transportation, where I will discuss, but I discussed it also many times on my video. Then we have, let's keep going on. Um, So we have farmhouses, cascine, just one thing, in the north and central part of Italy, masserie in the south of Italy. Then, typical regional home. In Italy, we have some exceptions, which are typical regional homes. I just wrote it down. We have trulli, for example, these cone-shaped houses that we might find in Apulia, expensive. In particular, if we go for a renovated one, the price can be minimum 200,000. Then we have Dammusi, which I'm not familiar with this type of housing solution. Dammusi, Dammusi, which you can find in a small island in Sicily, a small island called Pantelleria. Then we have the Sassi di Matera, houses that have been carved so they are caves, they are simply caves, I Sassi di Matera, which anyway, during these years, from being the shame of Italy, became to be extremely expensive and fancy. Anyway, mostly because I use it as a tourist accommodation. And a lot of tourists want to experience, this type of property that had been carved in the stones, in the soil. So, particular housing solution. Then we have huts and chalets that we might find in the mountain area, in particular in the Alps, the one at the border with Switzerland, with Austria, with France. Also, generally, these type of properties are expensive. All these type of typical regional home are very expensive. Then we have some exclusive urban solutions like penthouses. In Italy, penthouses, I don't know if it's the same understanding, but are generally attics in, uh, um, in a building with apartments. Generally, the penthouses are these last floor with an attic. That's what are called penthouses in Italy. Could be seven, eight floor, six floor house. But anyway, when you have the last floor with the attic, generally that is a penthouse. Then we have lofts, industrial spaces, readjusted to be housing accommodation, expensive. All of these are expensive housing solution. And the last, also very expensive, are the historical buildings considered with an historical value. And wherever you go in a big city, in Florence, in Venice, in Rome, in Naples, historical buildings, but even in medium-sized town, not in the very small. So if we go in between 30,000 and 100,000, which I consider, let's say, small city, okay, small cities, in this type of housing solution, this historical building between 30,000 and 100,000 inhabitants. Also, properties are expensive, this historical building. So, where do we find inexpensive? Just to make a recap, inexpensive, we find apartments, generally inexpensive, which are on a floor, second, third, fourth, or fifth floor in buildings without lift. And then we find terraced houses, inexpensive, in towns which are under 30,000 inhabitants. Just to give you a recap and understanding. For all the other type of housing solution, be ready to, if you are dreaming of one of these housing solution that I've just described, that is not an apartment in a building without lift, or in a terraced house in a town with under 20,000 inhabitants. So for all the other type of properties, let's say, even if we find inexpensive, we might need to spend a lot of money for renovation. And when we go for the renovation, then obviously it's like we bought a ready to live property, and we probably spend even more if we think that the money we spend plus the renovation obviously is more convenient to buy these type of houses, these type of solutions, which are already in a good condition with less works as possible, uh, simply because a full renovation I would never personally recommend unless you have a big budget and so you can afford. Obviously, depends what your budget is. Okay, my friends, I hope you have enjoyed this video. And my friends, I'll see you here on Italy A Place to Love YouTube channel next Sunday for another chapter here about the understanding of the Italian housing solution, and tomorrow for a property for sale. Bye.